Hey friends, welcome to Cozy Time Tales. Today we're going to be reading I Am Gandhi by Meltzer. I am Gandhi. I am Gandhi. Today people call me strong, unafraid, unstoppable. I wasn't always that way. As a child growing up in India, I was shy, afraid of the dark. I was also afraid of snakes. Ooh, a snake? Want to see it? I would very much not like to see it. Can you tell I was small? I spent most of my time with books. I wasn't good at sports like soccer. In fact, I'd run home after school, afraid that people would make fun of me. But I liked taking nice long walks. A long walk is a great way to spend the day. Try it, you'll like it. Even with all my books, I wasn't a great student. I was bad at multiplication. And one day, when I got one of our spelling words wrong, the teacher pointed to another boy's paper. What's he doing? He wants you to copy it for me, so you'll get the right answer. I didn't think that was the right thing to do. That's not how you learn. When the teacher scolded me, I wasn't bothered. In my life, I did not copy others' work. However, there was one story that was worth copying. It was a play I read in school about a man named Shravan Kumar. Shravan was so devoted to his parents that when they were too old to travel, he literally carried them on his back. This is a picture I will never forget. It was an example I wanted to follow, one person carrying others who needed help. My father had a good job. He was a political leader, but there were many who had no jobs. They were the poorest of the poor. They were treated terribly and had the worst jobs. There were even different laws that applied to them. Mohandas, see how many poor people there are? When you are born poor, life is hard enough. But in India, there was a group of people called the untouchables, who weren't allowed to make a better life for themselves. Back then, the British were so powerful, they ruled India. To get a good job like my father, I eventually moved to London, England, and became a lawyer. I even dressed up real fancy, trying to look rich and more British. When I moved back to India, I had my first case in court. This was the moment I trained for. All I had to do was question the witness. He doesn't look so good. I don't feel so good. The moment I stood up, my heart sank to my boots. It was like the room was spinning. I sat back down without a word. Here's your money back. You need to hire someone who's good at this. That was my first case. I completely failed. Luckily, I got offered a new case in a country called South Africa. I was excited to try again. As I took the last part of my journey by train, a white passenger noticed me. He shouldn't be here. This is first class. But I have a first class ticket. He didn't like me because I was Indian. My skin was brown and his was white. Believe it or not, he had the law on his side. The train official asked me to leave. He said that if I didn't leave, he'd call the police. Yes, you may, I told him. I refused to get out voluntarily. Why don't you go sit in third class where you belong? A policeman pushed me out of the train and tossed my stuff onto the station platform. It was cold in that station, and dark. I could have gotten back on the train and sat in third class. Instead, I stayed there all night, shivering. I also meditated, which is when you close your eyes and try to focus your mind. To finish the trip, I took a horse-drawn carriage, but once again, because of my skin color, they didn't let me sit inside with the white passengers. You'll sit out here as we go, on the footboard. That's not fair. I will not do so. The driver hit me in the ears and tried to drag me down. I never hit him back, but I refused to let go. Leave him alone! Let him be! Eventually, he gave up. But this is how Indians were treated back then. To change it, I knew I had to take action. I had to fight, even if it meant suffering hardship. Within a week, I held a meeting for my fellow Indians in South Africa. It was the first public speech of my life. I focused on the truth. They treat us unfairly because of our skin color. We must stand together and change the laws. Back then, Indians weren't allowed to be out after 9 p.m. We were limited to certain jobs, like being a hotel waiter or coal miner. We weren't even allowed to use the paved sidewalks. After the speech, we all had a discussion. There are times to talk, but there is also real power in listening. Soon after, I decided to stay in South Africa and formed the Natal Indian Congress to help Indians there become more active in the government. I purchased a farm where I took over a newspaper called Indian Opinion. I wrote about the government and why it'd be good to be a vegetarian and not eat meat. I even published articles by my favorite thinkers like Henry David Thoreau. But the most important thing I did there was come up with the satyagraha. Say it with me. Satyagraha. In Sanskrit, it combines the word satya, which means truth, and agraha, which means firmness or force. Truth Force? It sounds like a superhero team. Truth Force! Indeed, satyagraha was my truth force. Satyagraha was how we'd fight against the unfair treatment of Indians. Was I perfect? No. Sometimes I lost my temper. But that's when I figured out the best way to fight by transforming myself and being the best person I could be. Is that why he dressed in just simple clothes? That's the reason. Truth Force. In no time at all, I tested out satyagraha. A new law was passed that would kick Indians out of South Africa unless they registered with the government. Police could stop us on the street and search our homes anytime they wanted. They're doing this only to Indians. So what can we do? We will refuse to register. General Smut said if you don't register, we'll arrest you. It won't stop me from doing what's right. For breaking the law, they put me in prison for 2 months. They put me there again for breaking another law, one that said Indians couldn't travel to certain areas. Gandhi cooked for the other prisoners and volunteered to clean the toilets. That's gross. Only if you believe it is. Doing hard work makes you a stronger person, and a happier one. Reading my favorite authors' books helped me keep learning about how to change a bad system without violence, and how even when your body is locked up, your mind is free. I'm not sure what that means. It means my message and my thoughts are stronger than these prison walls. You know what's even stronger than that? People working together. Soon, we started more settlements and farms where those who practice satyagraha could live in a simple life in peace. At Tolstoy Farm, we focused on praying, studying, making things, and working in our garden. What are you making? Leather sandals. Gandhi wasn't just leading us, he was providing for us too. As our peace army grew, so did our strength. When the South African government made Indians pay more taxes than white residents and refused to improve the safety of coal miners, we decided to protest by striking. No one will go to work tomorrow. As we marched together, what began with a few dozen people grew to over 2,000. The more of us they arrested, the more people joined us. It was just like Thoreau's taught. Instead of using violence to protest the unfair rules, Indian people used a peaceful method. No one went to work at the coal mines. Without workers, the coal companies would go out of business. Now the only question was, would it succeed? It took years, but the South Africa government passed the Indian Relief Act of 1914, improving the lives of many Indians. I gave one of my greatest adversaries, the general who had me arrested all those years ago, a pair of leather sandals. Why are you giving me these? I made them. They're a sign of friendship. Better to make friends than enemies. Truth Force wins! Truth Force! After 21 years, it was time to take what I had learned in South Africa back to my home in India. India was still being run by the British, who treated us terribly. And worst of all, Indians still treated some other Indians terribly too. Gandhi, there's a family outside. They need a place to stay. But they are untouchables. We should turn them away. We need to carry others who need help. Let them in. Everyone is welcome here. To protest the unfair British laws in India, we held another strike. For one full day, no one went to work. All of India, every shop, farm, restaurant, closed down. The British got so mad, they sent their soldiers to an event that celebrated the religious New Year for many Indians. Over 10,000 people were gathered peacefully in a piece called Jallianwala Bagh. Get the Indians! The soldiers attacked the crowd. Over 1,000 were injured. Hundreds were killed. They hit us hard. It was tempting to hit them back. But violence will never get you what you want. As the head of our own organization, the Indian National Congress, I know what we must do. Truth Force, please say we're using Truth Force again! We did. Instead of buying British clothing, I urged people to use spinning wheels like this to make their own clothes. I would spin thread every day. I even made this cool outfit. By representing independence, his spinning wheel became so popular it was on the original design for India's flag. I called for massive boycotts, which meant we would stop going to British schools and stop working for British employers. I had to make sure that as many people as possible heard my message. To do that, I relied on the same thing as when I was younger. I walked. India was over 1,000,000 square miles. The poor lived in hard-to-reach villages, so I traveled to them. For 7 months, I ate the same meal 3 times a day. 16 ounces of goat's milk, 3 slices of toast, 2 oranges, and some grapes or raisins. Only by standing together, rich and poor, could we be free from this unfair government. Only united are we unstoppable. That didn't mean everyone was on my side. Even though my work against the government was peaceful, the British again put me in prison, this time for 6 years. I smiled as they took me to jail. I did not mind prison. It allowed me to read, pray, learn, and keep spinning. But within 2 years, I got sick there. The government knew people would be enraged if something happened to me, so they let me out. I went right back to my mission. The British government still wouldn't leave India. They passed new laws called the Salt Acts, which said Indians couldn't make or sell our own salt. We had to buy it from the British. Now our food tastes terrible. We need independence. This country is ours, not theirs. I'm writing a letter to the government, warning them this is their final chance to change the laws. Time for more Truth Force, isn't it? How could we convince the British? We marched. On March 12, 1930, 78 people joined me as we headed towards the sea. I was 60 years old, walking 240 miles, 10 miles each day for nearly a month. Where are we going? You'll see. The farther we walked, the more people joined us. They poured water on our paths to keep the dust down. They tossed flowers and leaves to make it easier to walk on. The crowd soon ballooned to thousands, stretching back for 2 miles. Reporters around the world told our story. I still don't know where we're headed. You'll see. The British want us to stop. Then we must keep going. 24 days later, we reached our destination, the village of Gandhi, near the Arabian Sea. There I gave my signal to the nation. What's he doing? There's something in the sand. I picked up a handful of salt left by the waves. That's it. I never raised my fist. I never carried a weapon. But in that act, holding salt that wasn't bought from the British government, I fought back. I broke the law, with the entire world watching. That seems like a really dumb law. I think a lot of folks agree with you. Truth Force! Soon after, I was arrested again. But over the next few days, thousands of Indians broke the same law. Just a few clumps of salt united our people and made the whole world realize how poorly the British were treating us. From there, it still took years, but we were on our way to India becoming a free country. My struggles weren't done though. Remember the untouchables? The poorest of the poor? They were still suffering. I was in jail, but I could act. What's he doing? He says he's fasting, that he won't eat until the untouchables are treated fairly. Doesn't this guy ever give up? No, I don't, and I never will. Sir, people all over the country, they heard what you're doing. They're treating the untouchables fairly now, letting them into their temples. They could lock me up, they could put me in the dark, but they could never ever defeat me. In my life, I was the small one, the skinny one, the poor one, even the shy one, but I was never the weak one. Over many years, I had many fights, but to fight by purposely avoiding violence, to refuse to raise your fist, no matter what is raised against you, some would call that foolish, madness. But what it really is, truth force, is courage. Today, Gandhi's famous satyagraha is as powerful as ever. It inspired civil rights movements all across the world, including those led by Martin Luther King Jr. and Nelson Mandela. For his amazing work, people started calling Gandhi Mahatma, which means great soul. We also call him Bapu, which means father. Did you know even today the flag of India is required to be made of the same homespun cloth made famous by him? And remember the general who Gandhi made those sandals for? 20 years later, as a sign of friendship, he returned them to Gandhi, saying that he'd worn them many summers, but was never worthy to stand in the shoes of such a great man. Truth force! Strength doesn't come from the size of your body. It comes from the size of your heart. Show love, especially when you want to fight unfairness. You must help others who are in need. Carry them on your shoulders. Speak up for them when they don't have a voice. Hold true to your beliefs. Truth force! I am Gandhi, and in a gentle way, I will shake the world. The end. Thanks for watching Cozy Time Tales. Don't forget to like and subscribe.